Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yasodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vivekacharya Saraswati Samad His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vivekacharya Saraswati Samad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Srila Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj ki jai. Srila Thakur Bhakti Vinod ki jai. Sri Guru Parampara ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Chaturmasya Vrat ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Go Premananda Hari Hari Bo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. All together, please. Om Jnana Timarandasya Ganandana Salakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yukta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Prijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padang Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dena Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapshikanchana Gaurange Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhana Sudadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita as it is, text number 29 of chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Okay. Please repeat. Prakṛter, guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ, sajjante, guṇa-karmasu, tan, akṛtsna-vido, mandān, kṛtsna-vin, na vicālayet, prakṛter guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ, sajjante guṇa-karmasu, tan akṛtsna-vido mandān, kṛtsna-vin vicālayet, prakṛter guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ, sajjante guṇa-karmasu, tan akṛtsna-vido mandān, kṛtsna-vin vicālayet. Okay. Prakrite guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ,
sajjante guṇa-karmasu, tan akṛtsna-vido mandān, kṛtsna-vin vicālayet.
prakrte guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ, sajjante guṇa-karmasu, tan akṛtsna-vido mandān, kṛtsna-vin vicālayet.
prakrte guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ, sajjante guṇa-karmasu,
sajjante guṇa-karmasu,
kṛtsna-vido mandān,
kṛtsna-vido mandān,
kṛtsna-vin vicālayet.
kṛtsna-vin vicālayet.
prakrte guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ,
prakrte guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ,
sajjante guṇa-karmasu,
akṛtsna-vido mandān,
akṛtsna-vido mandān,
kṛtsna-vit vicālayet,
kṛtsna-vidaḥ.
prakṛteḥ
sajjante
guṇa-karmasu
kṛtsna-vin
vicālayet prakṛteḥ guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ sajjante guṇa-karmasu akṛtsna-vido mandān kṛtsna-vin vicālayet. Please repeat. Prakṛteḥ of material nature. Guna by the modes. Sammūḍhāḥ befooled by material identification. Sajjante they become engaged. Guṇa-karmasu in material activities. Tan those akṛtsna-vidaḥ persons with a poor fund of knowledge. Mandān lazy to understand. Self-realization. Kṛtsna-vit one who is in factual knowledge. Not vicālayet should try to agitate. So, translation Srila Prabhupada, bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Please repeat. Bewildered by the modes of material nature. The ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. Purport to the Prabhupada. Persons who are unknowledgeable falsely identify with gross material consciousness and are full of material designations. This body is a gift of the material nature, and one who is too much attached to the bodily consciousness is called mandān, or a lazy person without understanding of spirit soul. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be ends in themselves. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they are always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and so they are not interested. Those who are enlightened in spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as non-violence and similar materially benevolent work. Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant men to try to engage them in acts of Krishna consciousness. which are absolutely necessary for the human being. Mukham karoti vācālam pangam laite girim yat kripa tamaham vande Sri Gurundinatarinam. Bewildered by the, prakṛter guṇa-sammūḍhāḥ sajjante guṇa-karmasu tan akṛtsna-vido mandān kṛtsna-vin vicālayet. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior to the performer's lack of knowledge. So very interesting. The activities are inferior due to the performer's lack of knowledge. So you could be doing the same duty, but the person in knowledge is performing superior activity. It's the same activity, but the degree of knowledge makes it superior or inferior. So this is a point that we're often discussing, right? That we need sajjante, we need knowledge. That is the first step of bhakti, to understand sambandha abhideya prayojan very nicely, the dashamula, the 10 primary points of the Vedas, because that knowledge clears nescience. Just like light clears darkness. So in the material world, also it's here that people are bewildered by the 3 modes of material nature. So there's that song by Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, Jeev Jago, Gora Chandra Bole, Pisachera Kole. How long will you remain sleeping in the lap of the witch of Maya? So that is not just a poetic statement, but we can see here Krishna is agreeing with Bhakti-Vinod Thakur, of course. The living entity, when he's having lack of knowledge, is actually under a spell of the material energy. And just like, say, a handsome prince goes into the forest and he's hungry, so he takes some grapes and he eats them. But then the witch in the forest comes and says, "Those are my grapes. I curse you to become a frog until the princess kisses you." So those kind of stories are there, aren't they? He's actually a handsome prince, but he's been cursed by the witch to become a frog. So this is the condition of the living entity, we understand from Shastra, Acharyas and Guru, that the living entity is meant to live eternally in full bliss and knowledge, in his constitutional relationship with the Supreme Lord and all the devotees of the Lord, but he's under the spell of the material nature. Somehow or other. The discussion of how he becomes in that way is simple and complex also, but it is by choice. He is marginal potency, and he's chosen this to adapt himself from the marginal position. He's chosen to adapt himself to the material energy. He should have chosen to adapt himself in the spiritual world. Actually, it's very interesting. While we're on the subject, I'll read the last paragraph in the last verse Yes. The last verse of the last chapter, the last paragraph of the purport. The living entity in his original position is pure spirit. He is just like an atomic particle of the Supreme Spirit. Thus Lord Krishna may be compared to the sun and the living entities to sunshine. Because the living entities are the marginal energy of the Lord, of Krishna, they have a tendency to be in contact either with the material energy or with the spiritual energy. In other words, the living entity is situated, he's tatasta shakti, tata means line, sta, situated, between the two energies of the Lord. And because he belongs to the superior energy of the Lord, he has a particle of independence. So we're spiritual beings, we're not matter. This has no independence, it's dull matter. Because he belongs to the spiritual superior energy of the Lord, he has a particle of independence. By proper use of that independence, he comes under the direct order of Krishna. Thus he attains his normal condition in the pleasure-giving potency, in the Ladini Shakti. So, Tatastha Shakti is on the line, and is explained emanating from Mahavishnu within the pradhan, and he can choose the spiritual or the material, adapt to either, it's his choice. So, if he uses his choice properly, he goes to the spiritual world. If he decides, I will go to the material world, he goes to the material world. But if he goes to the material world, because he's minute, he becomes overcome by the Maya Shakti. The Maya Shakti. And as we often say, the Maya Shakti, Vishnu, Prokta, Para, that also Maya Dakshina Prakriti, it is also the superior energy, and it puts him in forgetfulness of his spiritual nature. Nescience, if you remember, we've discussed this previously, has two effects. First, it makes the living entity forgetful. It makes him godless. He forgets that there is a superior entity. And the second is, once he is forgetful of Supreme Lord, then he enters into the material energy and tries to exploit it. He becomes fruitive in his actions. He's always trying to, with the three actions of speaking, thinking, and bodily activity, he's always looking for his own advantage. That's the fruitive mentality. Ishvaropi, to control, ahambogi, and so this is a spell, and he becomes subject to upadis, unwanted material designations. And so in this condition, he is like the handsome prince that has been turned into the frog. So how does the living entity come out of that? That is by the mercy of the sadhus. Brahmanda Barmate Kona Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai Bhakti-yoga. If he meets a sadhu and he has suitable sukriti, if he's certainly pious, and in this purport, Prabhupada gives a list of pious activities, social work, altruism, doing charity, looking after society. But there is one verse in the Bhagavatam, Dharma Samstapana. Yeah, that if you perform all your material duties, but you don't gain attraction for the Supreme Lord and His service, that is all useless. Why is it useless? Because you will remain in the material world. You will remain in the process of birth, death, old age and disease. So the solution is not material activities, but the living entity, when he's bewildered, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. They're in this spell. So that is something very interesting to consider. If you sit on the side of the road and you look at all the people, you can think they're all under the spell of Maya. Just like we see a child running here and there in the steps in the temple, chasing his friends. He's under the spell of being a little child. The woman is under the spell of being a woman. The man is under the spell of being a man. So that is something to contemplate, that when we're dealing with materially engrossed people, they're all under the spell. They're all under a spell. So sarva upadi vinayamuktam tat paratrena nirmalam rishikesha rishikena sevanam bhakti uchate. So the way to come out of that spell is by serving the pure devotee. He will teach you to how to not serve yourself in the material world, but to serve the pure devotee, to serve the Supreme Lord. And in Kali Yuga, to wake up that service attitude, we chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, we lose godlessness because we directly realize Krishna. The material energy, because it is a daivi prakriti, does overwhelm the intelligence of the living entity, because it is an emanation of the absolute truth. For example, if somebody studies Marxism, of course we know Marxism and communism and all that is just complete mental concoction. It's a proven failure in the world. But it has a potency to convince. Just like if you go to college and you study capitalism, and you may think, yes, capitalism is the way. Or the other person who's studying Marxism, he becomes convinced in that way. And then feminists, they listen to feminism propaganda and they think, there's a lot of truth in it. So all these different philosophies in the material world, they are composed of material energy, so they have the ability to convince the spirit soul, to bewilder them, because it has that potency. But it is the inferior potency. So when the spiritual potency is experienced by the spirit soul, he feels that directly. He feels the correction of the spiritual energy. He feels this is superior. He loses his godlessness, and he loses, and to the degree he is realizing the Supreme Lord, he develops a mood of service to Krishna at the same time. So the Mahamaya is replaced with Yogamaya. And Yogamaya means yoga, that energy which gives connection to the Supreme Lord. So the inferior energy is only conquered by applying to the spiritual energy. So you're all experienced devotees, you understand this point, but Krishna is saying something very interesting here. He says, okay, these materially ignorant people engaged in material activities, bewildered by the inferior energy, the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior to the performance lack of knowledge. So it says the wise should not unsettle them. And Prabhupada, in the beginning of the purport, if you remember, he was saying, yes, better to pursue one's spiritual life silently. If you remember, one should not disturb them and simply waste valuable time. But devotees are more kind. Then he says an interesting thing, that actually, though Krishna is saying here, don't unsettle them, fly your own aeroplane, perform your own spiritual activities. Prabhupada also said that the greatest realization is to liberate yourself. You know that the greatest achievement is not to liberate the world, but to liberate your own self. And he gave the example that you have to fly your own aeroplane. We're all in an aeroplane flying, and only you are on the controls. You're the only person. People can radio messages to you. The spiritual master, the sadhus, the shastra can give you knowledge, but it is up to you to put that into effect and guide your aeroplane back to Godhead. So it is correct that we shouldn't be distracted by materially engrossed people. But Prabhupada says the devotee is more kind than the Lord in one sense. So he's not contradicting the Lord, but he's understanding my priority is my own spiritual practice, my own sadhana, my own understanding, my own chanting. That is my priority. But the natural effect of becoming spiritually realized is that one wants to help those that are materially entangled. The sadhu. The sadhu isn't just a neutral figure. That may be there in the Mayavadi, who thinks it's all illusion, or in the voidist, who thinks I shouldn't have emotion, I should just withdraw. But the real sadhu, person of knowledge, knows that this is a spirit soul. It belongs to Krishna. Now it's in bewildered condition. Let me help. And that is exemplified in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, right? The Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Lord Chaitanya started in the courtyard of Srivas Pandit, right? They started chanting, and then they went out in Navadvip. They got in trouble with the Chandkazi, but Lord Chaitanya persuaded him. And so the Sankirtan movement is for that purpose. So we're not contradicting the Supreme Lord when he says, or Prabhupada is not he's not contradicting the Supreme Lord when he says the devotees are more kind, because they know the real understanding of the Lord, the real feeling of the Lord. He wants, the devotee carries the mercy of Krishna, and the Supreme Lord wants that mercy to be given to the fallen souls. But the priority is not to lose your own spiritual practice. Now it's very interesting, because though Krishna here sums up this section by saying, don't disturb them, leave them alone. they're materially engrossed. You do your devotion, your sadhana, don't get mixed up with them. But earlier he said something very interesting. In verse number 26, he seems to say something that is contradictory in a way. He says here, so as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results, right? Don't disrupt. They're attached to the fruitive result of prescribed duties. That's the ignorant person. He's more or less godless and he's just acting karmically. I want to do this so I get a good result. A learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So here Krishna is saying, they are attached to this. Don't tell them, you're in Maya, just chasing karmic results. Right? He doesn't say that. He says, no, don't tell them to stop work. Which is very interesting because at the beginning of the Gita, that was Arjuna's idea, was it not? Oh, this is all terrible. And even at the beginning of this chapter, Arjuna says, if you're talking about knowledge, why do you want me to do this ghastly warfare? So there is a tendency, when karma doesn't give fruit, material karma, to renounce the world, to become a jnani, maybe to just go in the attic and study books, or go into a cave and try to get liberation, mukti. But Krishna doesn't say to do that. He says, no. Encourage them to do works in devotion. But he says that. One, the sage, he says, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So that's what Prabhupada did, is it not? He went to America and started chanting, people would become, and then he engaged everyone, distribute literature, open temples, distribute prasadam. Now you can imagine in those early days, the devotees, they didn't know Siddhanta, they didn't know about the material energy, the spiritual energy. But what did Prabhupada do? He engaged them in all sorts of activities for the propagation of spiritual life. And then that is benefit for the people that take the prasadam or hear the chanting, and it's also very beneficial for the devotees, even from the neophyte condition, who are doing this. So this is a basic theory in this chapter that Krishna explains, that don't stop your activities, Arjuna, but do them in a spirit of devotion. And just like Lord Brahma was told in that verse we did last week, Dharma Madyat Parichajam Mamekam Bhajva Vishwasam Yadasi Shraddha Siddhir Bhavati Tadrishi. Krishna told Arjuna, Brahma, that people act in the pursuance of some ideal. But in the purport, I was checking the purport a couple of days ago, and it says that actually the devotee, when he gets some duty, material duty, he accepts it as being given by the Supreme Lord, and he performs that duty as an offering to the Supreme Lord. Just like we gave the example that if you engage a carpenter to build a door, then he follows your instructions. You're not building the door, but he is building the door according to your instructions. So that's a form of devotion, right? He is following your instructions. And he is doing it according to your instructions. So Lord Brahma is told to do that. Now use your intelligence, you have all this teja, construct the material world under my guidance. But understand, you have been engaged in this by me. So don't perform it for your own benefit, perform it as an offering to me. And that is bhakti. You understand? So the difference is the knowledge. So we can, and that's what it says in the purport, that whatever duty we come, we may be a mother with children, we may be a father with children, we may be a doctor with patients, we may be a taxi driver. We should think, if we have spiritual knowledge, that I have been given this duty, so now I must perform it as an order from the Supreme, just like I'm giving order to the carpenter, make the door in this way, make it a double door and put windows in it. So I have been given this occupation by the Supreme Lord, but I will act according to as an offering to the Supreme Lord. Just like the carpenter, if he follows my instructions in making the door, I'm very pleased, you know, and I give him a bonus or something. So, but when we have some material duty, it should be done as an offering to the Supreme Lord. It shouldn't be done karmically. The carpenter shouldn't think, I'm just doing it for money. I'll do it how I like. Never mind what he says. Do you understand? He should, I've been engaged in building this door. Let me do it nicely for the boss, right? So that is the mentality of a devotee. I've got this duty. Let me do it nicely as an offering. Then the work with the basis of that knowledge becomes spiritualized, becomes bhakti. So Krishna says that, rather by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So the devotee with knowledge, he engages people in the service of Krishna. And then the next one, 27, the spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are actually carried out by the three modes of material nature. So we think kartaham iti manyate, but actually everything is under the control of the Supreme Lord and his devatas. One who is in knowledge of the Absolute Almighty Armed does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. So Parikshit Maharaj, when he was cursed to die in 8 days, he didn't think, now I'll just enjoy for 8 days. He gathered all the sages and said, what is my duty now? They told him, Anti Narayana Smriti, you should remember the Supreme Lord when you're leaving this body. So he had great knowledge, of course. So he knew the difference between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Fruitive results will give us a bewildered condition where we identify with the body and the material activities. And then today's verse, bewildered by the three modes of nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activity and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior in quality due to the performer's lack of knowledge. And then Krishna makes the final point here in the next verse, number 30. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works to me. So he's talking about sarva dharma prajaja, surrender to me, with full knowledge of me, with siddhanta, with the blessing of the instruction of the Guru and the Shastra and the Acharyas, without desire for profit. That means without fruitive desire. That means I'm doing it, but I'm not thinking, oh, I'll get some result to enjoy. With no claims to proprietorship. Right? Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Krishna. Krishna is the proprietor of everything. Just like that carpenter. He builds the door, but after the door is built, he doesn't say, now this door belongs to me. This house belongs to me. I'm the proprietor. I built it. No, I gave you the wood. I gave you the employment. I gave you the design. I gave you everything. It's my house. It's not your house just because you made the door. Huh? And free from lethargy, fight. So, surrendering with full knowledge, one, surrender your works to me, one, full knowledge, siddhanta, without desire for profit, fruitive desire, no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. So those four things, full knowledge, no desire for profit, no claim to proprietorship, and free from lethargy. So Krishna's repeated it here, and it's in the Sanskrit, mandān. Huh? So there's that famous verse. It's in the Bhagavad-Gita, right? It's about Hiupadruta. Manda Sumanda Mateo Manda Bhagya Hiupadruta. So this describing the people in Kali Yuga particularly. Manda, as Prabhupada explained, is they're slow or lazy. That means, in the spiritual context, because the verse is about the spiritual context, they're lazy to enjoy or pursue spiritual knowledge. Oh, I'm doing my karmic activity, I'm doing charity work, I'm doing altruism, but I don't have to worry about bhakti and becoming less fruitive and realizing siddhanta. They're lazy. That's manda, sumanda. Sumanda means they're slow to understand. Right? In Kali Yuga, people are slow. This is speaking generally. What do you mean I'm not the body? Right? That's the first point, isn't it? What do you mean I'm not the body? I've got to brush my teeth, haven't I? I sleep. When I look in the mirror, what do you mean I'm not the body? That, my mother knows me. What do you mean I'm a spirit soul? Huh? That's not what the doctor says to me. When I'm sick, it doesn't say. So slow to understand. Now the best way to understand is, again, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Because Nityananda Shakti is in the holy name in Kali Yuga, right? Because the Nityananda Shakti is Guru Shakti. So the special quality of the Maha Mantra is it teaches you. I have personal experience of this. I used to run a guest program in London, and we would give a talk, give prasadam, and afterward we talk to people, and I would just be friendly and encourage people to chant. I had a little bookshop and selling neem beads for like 10 rupees or something. So I never really taught much philosophy. I used to just talk in a friendly way. It was very enjoyable. So those that took the beads and started chanting, they came back to the temple and they said, what is all this about Goloka and the spirit? They would automatically start asking questions. You didn't have to sit them down and say, you're going to go to hell, you're in the cycle of birth and death. They would automatically, by chanting, I would say, just chant one round in the morning, one in the evening. And they would come back and they say, wow, I could see they were interested. That's the Nityananda Shakti. So Sumanda is conquered by that, the slowness, by the grace of Krishna. Because ultimately, Swayameva Spuryada, everything is understood by Spurti. Krishna gives intelligence. It doesn't matter if you're intellectual or not. Krishna can give you the right understanding. So Manda Mateo Mandabhagya. So Mandabhagya, Prabhupada explains that is often they get the wrong instruction. Insufficient instruction is different from incorrect instruction. So they may be interested in spiritual life, and then they think, they talk to a Mayavadi and he says, we're all God. You should make the mind empty and realize your Godhood. So of course that may help in a certain way to control the mind, but it is not the best instruction. So Mandabhagya. Bhagya means you get a good devotee who knows Siddhanta Mandabhagya. He upadruta. So that's, Krishna says there, Prabhupada says, don't disrupt their minds. Don't disrupt their minds. Because they're very easily disrupted. Because Kali Yuga is passion and ignorance. Everyone's very anxious, even just to get some roof over their head or some food in their stomach. They have to work very hard. They have to pay a heavy mortgage. The tax man is coming. The television is telling them this. There's war, conflict everywhere. So people in Kali Yuga, they are, in kunta, anxiety. So when they become disrupted, they freak out, right? They go bananas. So you don't disrupt people, Krishna is saying, but engage them in works of devotion. Oh, can you help me distribute prasad to the assembly? Okay, I'll help. Then the devotional service is starting. You understand? So, this is the skill of a devotee. He engages people. Oh, take prasad. Do this, do that for Krishna. Can you help clean the temple? There's a famous story about Prabhupada in Matchless Gifts in New York. He used to give a talk. He was a kirtan and then give a talk. So in the middle of a talk, a kind of homeless person came in, and he had toilet rolls. You know the story? And some of the devotees say, why are you making this disturbance? And he went to the toilet and put the toilet rolls on the roll in the toilet. Prabhupada said, no, leave him.
And he was drunk.
He
Was drunk.
Was he drunk?
Yeah.
I didn't know he was drunk.
He was
He was? Yeah. I didn't know that detail. A drunk man, a homeless kind of unfortunate, he came in with toilet rolls in the middle of the class. And the devotee said, what's going No, Prabhupada said, let him do that. Let him put the toilet. He's doing devotional service. He's actually more fortunate than the Queen of England. Because he started his devotional service. He started serving a great Mahabhagavat. So, never mind, he's a bit tipsy, but he's doing some service. So, that's the starting point, Sukriti, Ajata, especially to a great Mahabhagavat. It's explained in the Shastra, if you give a donation to a Mahabhagavat, then it comes back thousands and, many, not that we should be fruitive, but it has a great effect. So, that is the skill of Prabhupada. That is the skill of Prabhupada. There's another story like that. Prabhupada as a servant in the early days, and he was a good servant, a good devotee. But one day he just disappeared. And he was Prabhupada's personal servant. And he came back 6 months later. And he said, oh, Prabhupada, I'm sorry, I lost control of my senses. It was the hippie days or something. Maybe he went to some pop concert and smoked some grass or something. Prabhupada, I just lost control of my, Prabhupada said, you make good rasgulas. I remember. Go to the kitchen and make me some rasgulas. There was no big inquest. Prabhupada just engaged him straight away. Go and make me some rasgulas. So this is this section, right? That we should engage people in works of devotion. And we can, and we should understand, Prabhupada's skillful at handling people, because people in Kali Yuga, they're bewildered very much. And how do we wake them up? By chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So thank you all very much. Any quick question? Yes.
So why Krishna repeated the same in 26? You said he's saying that don't disturb them.
Yeah.
And in 29 also, and in
26.
26 and 29th also is saying that don't disturb the. And in 10 offenses, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in 10 offenses.
Number 9.
Don't.
Number 9.
Reach to number 9.
Yeah.
And on the same Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Jade Dekho Tare Ko Krishna Upadesh. So
Yeah.
who
Well, that's Mahaprabhu. Prabhupada makes that point. Krishna is saying, don't disrupt them. Carry on with your own bhakti. He's making that point. But Prabhupada says there in the purport, if you remember, the devotee knows the heart of the Lord. He's saying that, my dear devotees, protect your own devotion. But the devotee knows Krishna's saying that. But like I said, 2-3 verses earlier he says, engage them in works of devotion. So you can balance the two. Krishna says, engage them in works of devotion. And then he says, but don't disrupt them. Don't, make yourself a priority. We can take both things. You understand? But then the whole point is that Krishna says, don't give up your own spiritual practice. You understand? Engage everyone to your ability, but make sure your sadhana is good. Prabhupada had a sign in his room: health, sadhana, seva. So he put health above sadhana. That's your own spiritual practice. You have to maintain your health, and then you can do good sadhana. And then seva, service. So that service would mean spreading the Sankirtan movement. And then also there's that verse, Bharati Bhumi Manusha Janma Hoila Jas, right? Yeah. Make your life perfect and then spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. First become perfect. Yeah. Become fixed up. Become a strong devotee. Then spread Krishna consciousness. So the point is consistent.
And also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes as a devotee.
Huh?
So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes as a devotee.
Yeah.
So he knows the heart of the Lord.
Yes,
He
so
wants
they,
to bring
yeah.
people close. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, you take the risks to
Yeah,
bring.
Mahaprabhu is doing that. And just like Jagai and Madai is a perfect example, right? Have you read Chaitanya Bhagavat? Haridas Thakur and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they used to go preaching together. Nityananda. And Nityananda, he is avadut. So sometimes he would go up to a beautiful girl and say, look, if you chant Hare Krishna, maybe I'll marry you. Like that. He'd do extraordinary things, like go into a drinking house. Tell me, you should chant Hare Krishna. So Haridas Thakur is very... And then there's a funny story. The first time they met Jagai Madai, have you read in Chaitanya Bhagavat? They disturbed the mind of Jagai and Madai, and then they had to run off. So there's a very funny conversation. And Haridas Thakur says, this is what I get for going preaching with a madman. They said, oh no, it's not that. They were running away from Jagai and Madai, and they're having this repartee. It's kind of funny. So there's Nityananda Prabhu. It's because of his mercy that they got the mercy, Jagai Madai. So yes, Prabhupada is of course perfectly correct to say that the devotee knows. So when Mahaprabhu comes with Nityananda and Srivas, they do the Sankirtan movement. Gadadhar Pandit, Advaitacharya called, everyone is fallen down. Advaitacharya didn't think, I'll just open a Sanskrit school. No, he called for Mahaprabhu, right? So yes, in Kali Yuga.
They will make the Kazi a devotee.
He even made the Kazi a devotee. Yeah. He converted the Prakashananda. So yes. And that is the sign of a devotee, right? He's like a Chintamani. He turns people into devotees. So that's something to consider. But at the same time, I think Krishna is giving us a hint. Be careful, because they're bewildered souls. Sometimes these fanatic preachers, they stand on you're all going to hell, the devil is going to get you. My mother, she used to go to church 3-4 times a day, a week. She told me, "Oh, I don't like these, Catholic churches." She said, "I don't like all these preachers that say you're going to go to hell if you have a mortal sin. I like when they talk about love of God." That's what she told me. She came here for 6 months. She went all over India, on one of those train passes. In the old days, you could pay $20 and you could go for 3 months. Or she went all over India with my sister. So they stayed here. Then they went all over India. They went to places in India I've never been. So I went to Krishna Balaram. I said, look after them. Oh, it's so funny. So they came back, and I thought, I saw them in the guest house, and I said, "Mother, how did you find the South and all that traveling?" I was thinking maybe, I had the bad food, I drank bad water, somebody picked my pocket on the train. I was worried that, She said, "It was wonderful. Everywhere we went, people were so nice." Thank you, Krishna Balaram. That's what she said. She said, she wrote me a letter later. She said, now I've been to India, I need a vacation. India is more like an experience than a holiday. So Krishna, he can do anything. That's what she said. Everywhere we went, everyone was wonderful. I did. You had a better experience than me.
Because no one's praying for you. You prayed for her. She's being looked after. You're on your own.
So then she got into this love of God, you see, after being in India and going round. Is that me or you? No. Yeah, so anyway, so this is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And this is the mood of Prabhupada, Bhakti-siddhanta, Bhakti-vinod, to spread this knowledge. But the hint is given there. Be strong in your own sadhana. That's how we can balance that. Okay, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.